born outside the country, and many of us have lived here in this country much longer than we were in our original
birth countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's get things started with Patricia. She will introduce herself to you and speak on the subject of our exhibit, Memories from the Metropolis. Patricia.
Good evening, everyone. Born and raised in Haiti. I came here in 1964 and was an adult already. I cannot remember a time when I was not drawing or painting or doing something. My earliest memory of painting was at my home in Saint-Michel-de-la-Dalaye, which is a little village in the middle of Haiti, in the Artibonite.
Yes.
At home we cooked with coal.
Okay,
You know,
okay,
So I'd go out and I'd take a piece of coal that's not hot, and I remember just drawing on rocks with it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There was a, yeah, you know,
Charcoal feet.
and I would take a mango and eat it and be left, you know, when you're a kid, you take every single little piece of juice that's in that mango and you're left with those fibers. And I would make 2 little cords here and 2 little cords here, and with the coal make a little face and make a little person. So those memories are very vivid in me, but I was very, very young. So art was always there. It was born with it. Then as the age went on, when I was about 16 years old, I would make Christmas cards and place them in bookstores and sell them to friends and family. And I did good money with it. I mean, for me, you know, in Haiti at 16 years old, that was good money. But when I came here, I realized that maybe I can continue doing this here. So I went over to a place, you know, it was a pharmacy that had a rack with all sorts of Christmas cards and so forth. So I went over to the gentleman and I showed him samples of the cards that I was making. And he says, no, this is not what we do. You have to go to a company and we buy them from a company. And that was the first time that I really realized that making money as an artist in the United States was not going to be easy. So I continued to paint, but you know, sold to friends and gave the artwork away or painted for myself. And continued on until about, I would say, 20 years ago. A friend came to visit my husband. My husband has a home office, and we're talking with them. He's an artist. He was coming from abroad, and they were talking business. My artwork is all over my home, And in conversation, you know, I said, I would love to. He said, do you show? And I said, no, I would love to, you know. And he made me realize that I had a body of work that was good enough to really have an art show. So I decided to put up a show at my home and call it 4 Decades, showing artwork that spent 40 years. And it was so successful that even artwork that I had there that put a sign on work in progress were sold before I even finished the work. So every year I would have a show and people would actually look forward to that show. And it was really nice. It was an open house at my home. That kind of made my name a little bit. And soon I was being invited to shows over here, to shows over there. That brought me to where I am now. The show at my home was in 2010, after the earthquake in Haiti that took the life of 300,000 people.
Oh,
Yeah, amazing, right? My husband and I, we formed a corporation called From Here to Haiti. And the open house that we would have was now changed into an art show where I'd invite now other artists to participate, and I would raise the funds for From Here to Haiti, and we repair churches in Haiti since then.
you actually physically go down there and do a
Yes,
job
yes,
and make sure that this stuff is done, right?
Yes, we do. It's funny because the first job that we did in Haiti, we prepared everything beforehand. We knew exactly we were going to change the roof and fix the column. We had all the materials delivered, and we knew already from the priest and from the mayor how many people were going to, come and work, and we wanted only volunteers. So when we got there on Monday morning, we started the work, and I welcomed them and told them that the work had to be finished on Thursday. Needless to say, they looked at me like I had 3 heads, because work in Haiti, takes a long time, because people gotta stop, they gotta eat, maybe, that job is not their job, it's the other person's job, and he went out, it's probably like this in all the Caribbean countries. But when I explained that to them, very laid back, but when I explained to them that this had to be done in a week, and that while the people were removing the roof, they could start building the roof on this side while they were still removing the roof on that side, and at the same time people at the bottom could be working on the columns. That could be done. We hired about 70 people, and the work was done, and it was amazing to see all of them, the whole village really working together toward a goal. And there was volunteers, but at the end I told them they're getting paid. As a matter of fact, during the construction around Wednesday, they came over to us and said, Madame Patricia, we can, instead of starting at 8 o'clock and finishing at 5, it's really clear, the sun is already up before 8 o'clock, so we could come, maybe at 6 o'clock and start working. And then they said, at 5 o'clock, it's still light. We can work until 8 o'clock. So on their own, they decided to do that. And I worked it out where they got overtime. So at the end, thanked them for their volunteer service and told them, but you're getting paid. And those of you who wanted to stay will get overtime. And it was a lesson for them. And I'm hoping that now they are putting this in effect. You know, if everybody gets together, you can do a lot of things.
That's amazing.
So I'll pass, you know.
Sure.
Mr. Murrell.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia Brintle. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. It was not easy getting here. But we have an excellent driver and good company with his wife. First, let me start by saying, okay, I'm from the island of Barbados. I've been an artist roughly 50 years. And the one thing that I remember that still to this day stands out is when I was in elementary school. At that time, there was a trip. We were taken to what we call a museum. I don't really call it much of a museum.
It's a history museum.
Yeah, it's a historical, a little horticulture, bones and lizards and stuff like that. And here and there a painting. Well, as you know, I had to be frozen in front of the painting. Naturally, because there's something in consciousness working. I hadn't yet discovered who I am to be an artist. So I was probably around 11 years or so. And I'm frozen in front of this painting, all of this painting, how this artist would have put this thing together and so on, right? And then all of a sudden I feel this whip in my back, or on my behind, so I'm thumbnail. Having my work exhibited, selling my work, and meeting people and so on and so forth. Then I got a letter from my dad saying, your mother is dying if you don't come. I didn't want to go. At that time it was the Vietnam War, and I was afraid to ever think about war. So I had to come. Well, I came. And the first thing I wanted to do was to find an art school. But I did find the Art Students League. And within a short space of time, they saw my ability. And they recommended that I take my work, my portfolio work, to the office. And there I was given a scholarship. So I didn't have to pay for my studies any longer. Scholarship, I started to study illustration. And every weekend I got to find a way how to get my work into the marketplace. And as I was sharing with them coming up in the car, lots of times I got in my car by myself, drove all the way to Boston, Maryland, wherever, to show my work. And it was paying off. It was paying off. Not a lot of sales, but I got a lot of newspaper returns. Yeah, many so. Daily News at least 10 times, New York Times, television, radio, and I started meeting people. And this was beginning to look real good and so on. But I had a corporate job just to pay the bills and make sure I build my Social Security, because you can't bank on this stuff. By now I'm married and have a daughter and so on, so I had to do it. Well, unfortunately, I would say in the 90s, somewhere in the late 90s, early 90s, I got laid off. So what am I going to do? I'm going to turn to the thing that's closest to me, the art. By this time then I met Anderson Pilgrim. Anderson did something that, to this day, I'm very thankful for. When he exposed my work to the Brisbane Art Library. The Brisbane Art Library they have like a registrar.
The licensing.
Yes. And several books right now house my work in terms of uses for illustration purposes. One particular piece is the Thinking one. You remember that piece?
Oh, yeah.
At least 50 books. And then Fine Art America, they subcontracted them with Fine Art America. And all around the world, people are actually seeing images of my work used in different formats. mugs, shower curtains, t-shirts, cell phone covers, all sorts of things. So there is the commercial aspect. It's getting me in places ordinarily that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get my originals, but the images are out there. And of course, then the teaching thing came soon thereafter. So although I lost my job and the corporate experiences that I had and so on, teaching came. I had so many teaching assignments, I had to turn them down. But while doing that, I'm painting these things, you know. And I always wanted to document stories, growing up, experiencing things in the backyard, on the beaches, and so on. So I started then to deliver this, and folks started to purchase my work. Not too many, for some reason, Caribbean people, but nonetheless they were being sold. And then the years started multiplying. Excuse me. And then here last year I said to myself, you've actually been doing this for 50 years. So I'm beginning to feel like an old man now, and I'm saying to myself, I can't be running around doing all these shows like I used to. So I started to slow down, but nonetheless, some interesting things happened. Patricia may have forgotten to share with you, both of us have been found by HBO television, cable television, about a month ago, right? Yeah. There is a television series called High Maintenance. I got this email, surprise email. We saw your website, we love your work, we would like to come by and rent some pieces for this television series. And that was done. And of course, we both got paid. That's another nice little feather in the cap. So these ideas are part of my world growing up and experiencing these various subject matter. And I continue to do that. Now I'm working, you all haven't seen it yet, but I'm working now with the palette knife, where it's a lot looser bowl. The paint tends to project a bit off the canvas. But that's the new body of work that I will have coming up soon. So I hope you guys are enjoying this exhibition. And anyone you know with deep pockets, you can bring them in.
I want to check this work in case I saw you guys looking around. So please
yeah, those two
right
there.
in the window, the one over there,
And the one with the boats.
and this one
Yeah.
ensemble piece. Right?
Yeah. So basically two elements, the water and the inland is very concentrated, my ideas from. Thank you for listening.
Let's hear from Kevin.
Well, hi everybody, I'm Kevin Darmanie. These are my pieces over here. Can't say
Over the mantle
pieces
and
because
to the
everyone
right.
has version pieces. Yeah, the figure looks like me a lot.
And then the two right behind you, right behind. Against the wall.
So, should I talk about how I became an artist and stuff?
Okay.
Let us hear a bit about you.
Okay, well, I live here in Newark. I've been in this Newark scene for quite some time. Victor says, Victor Babson over here, former director of Al Jarrah. He said he's known me for about 10 years. It's actually longer than that. I think 1997 or something like that, the first time we met.
Yeah, so I apologize.
As you get older, you like to try to shrink those dates, you know?
Yeah. As I get older, I just start trying to.
When you're 25,
Yeah.
10 years is a long time.
But yeah,
Because that would actually make me know him for twice as many years.
I'm not really sure you're thinking.
Yes. So
5 years.
how about 21 years? I said 10.
Let's say 5 years, give or take, you know,
Yeah.
90s.
I'm just talking about it conceptually.
Yeah.
Abstract.
And then the
But go ahead.
Well, there's family. There's family. You don't count years with family. You know?
Yeah.
Just say that's family. That's true. So yes, born and raised in Trinidad, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you. I came here 1988, RoboCop was a big movie in the theaters. Because it was the first thing I did when I got here. I landed here in my mid-teens in East Orange. Went to high school in East Orange. And then when I became an adult, I eventually started working in Newark and then later moved to Newark. Largely a self-taught artist. I've taken little classes here and there and stuff. But when I made my move to Newark, I got very quickly involved with the Newark arts community. There was also an arts community and a little arts community in East Orange. Particularly, like some friends of mine had started like a comic book company. And so what they had done was basically taken some, I don't know, whoever was around in the neighborhood that would like to draw and kind of train them into being like comic book artists in a very traditional way. Like this is before doing any kind of art on computers, or computer-aided art, I should say, you know. So everything was cut and paste, hand by hand and stuff, and inks and, you know, very traditional way of like creating comic books. So the guy that was responsible for kind of whipping us into shape was Darryl Goza, who he had worked in comics for Neil Adams for like a number of years. So that's where I kind of that was my initial training. And then later I remember they found a Picasso or something like that. So I always thought fine art was just this kind of whacked out art, and even that's what Darryl would call it, whacked out art, you know. With these crazy prices that just didn't make any sense. So they so didn't make sense that you just didn't even like affix them to whatever they were talking about. You know, just, okay, it's just like kind of just. But I remember they found a Picasso, it was a portrait or something, in someone's basement, and they valued it at $10 million.
Bargain.
Yeah, and that just struck me, because I looked and said, well, I know artists who can, you know, in the comic book field, who can just dust that stuff. And they're selling, so back then you would go to comic book conventions, and the artists who, you know, even big names would be like, they'd have like a table, and you can go over and meet them, and buy stuff from them. And they usually would have a stack of their like inks or pencils on their table, and they'd sell you like this page that they did out of Spider-Man and stuff. And that's how you actually, the pages were so cheap that was one of the ways that you would learn. You would buy, you know, oh, I want to draw like Jim Lee, so you go to this table, and you buy a Jim Lee page from him. And you take it home, and then you lay a tracing sheet on top of it, and you trace everything off, so you get a sense of how he works. Today, I think those pages are much more expensive than back then. Yeah, but that was how we, you know. And I'm like, man, you know, like, so I was a big Bernie Wrightson fan. And I was like, you know, one of Bernie Wrightson's pages, it's like $100. This guy has one painting, and it's 10 million. I said, well, whatever he's doing, maybe it's so whacked out that I just don't get it, and that's the thing, you know. And I'm like, if I could just get anywhere close to that, you know, like half. I'll do all right. I said, yeah, I'll do, you know. So then I started to kind of like go into the city and go into Soho, and by then most of the galleries were leaving Soho. But, you know, I didn't know what was going on. I remember seeing Schnabel's paintings and stuff, and you know, but not really. And then he Soho very quickly started having these kind of commercial knockoff galleries, if you know what I mean. It looks like Andy Warhol, but it's not.
So embarrassing.
This is one of the exhibited artists, by the way.
Everybody should rise. This is the most senior.
Yeah, he's a doctor now.
Yeah.
Yes, he's also a doctor.
Let's see that your name on it.
Pulitzer, please.
Let's see that your name on it.
So, I mean,
So why were you late?
no. You're not allowed to ask that question. You're honored by his presence. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. This brother has come all the way from Harlem. That's right. So this that's really good.
Well, I would say thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Thank everyone for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for making it here. I don't know, well,
Bernie writes and he sold the
yeah,
paintings for
Thank
half.
you for interrupting me because I was getting into the pointy part of my
Yeah.
life story. Anyway, I connected to Roy Lichtenstein, which is a logical extension of coming out of comics.
Yeah.
And started doing Roy Lichtenstein paintings. That was like my gateway artist for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened after that. I know I started to meet like Jerry Gann, and, you know.
But you should talk about your graphic novel, because you have a wonderful graphic novel.
So my flirtations with comics, I got tired of I just thought they were just too nerdy for me. I wanted to hang with the cool kids, which to me were like painters and stuff, because they were all intellectual and respected one another's work and analyzed one another's work. The comic book guys just wanted to work for Marvel Comics and talk about what if Spider-Man and Hulk had a fight, who would win? And I would sit there and just cringe. And I was like, there's no girls here. So I wanted to go hang with the cool kids.
This is before cosplay.
Yeah.
Cosplay really
Right.
sucks.
Well, yeah, now the girls in it.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, back then it was just like, it was just a bunch of
Five dudes in
and
a bin.
the fine artists had the girls,
That's right.
and they had a shot at $10 million. So, I just thought the odds were better. It was better, invest my time over there. So I kind of started getting out. But I still have a lot of love for the art form.
Yeah.
Storytelling, working with pictures, writing a script. I actually cherish my skills as a writer from that time. And that was something I realized I kind of had to give up in order to try to pursue this purely visual career. That's why my work is still, still so narrative, because that was such a big part of who I was, What am I talking about?
You're
going to
I
graphic
was
novels.
saying, how did you develop this?
novels, yeah.
So,
How
right.
did you develop this distinctive style of yours?
So the comic book work accumulated into a graphic novel called Culprit, which is still available on Amazon.com.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
It's put out by Dreadlock Ninja Publishing. Every once in a while they'll give me a little update, and they still go to comic book conventions, and they'll have a stack of culprits, and they sell them and interact with people on them, and I just get little updates every once in a while, even though I wrote and illustrated the story and everything. But that's just what happens. I'm proud of it, and that hopefully one day I'll get a call from Wesley Snipes because he wants to turn it into a movie. But until that day, I just don't, I don't worry about it too much. And it's also in the collections at the North Public Library.
Wesley Snipes needs to pay off his taxes.
Yeah.
I think he did that already.
He did that.
I don't think they'll be walking around.
He's due for a comeback.
He's back.
He paid dearly for that too.
Yeah.
While some of the others go scot-free.
Plus I'm
Are
old school.
you trying to slander our president?
Yeah.
Please, that's not the moment of we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, no.
Who was the publisher? Say it again for the.
Dreadlock Ninja Publishing, which is the same company out of East Orange.
Yeah, here.
So fast forward from that, I'm in Newark and I'm trying to break into the fine art game. Gallery of Pharaoh, I started curating little shows and stuff with Noel Lorraine Williams. And
You worked at Aljara for a while.
yeah, and we did a show at Gallery of Pharaoh. And during the course of the show, Yvonne had offered me like a studio space, which was great because that just gave me an opportunity to kind of get, make something happen. And then shortly after that, they said, yeah, we'll give you a studio space and maybe next year we'll even do a solo show. And simultaneously, Nugent Smith, who's an artist as well, he was running Lex London Gallery in Jersey City. And he offered me a solo show. And this was off of me trying to get into fine art, but really being still embedded in my skills as a comic book artist. And I don't know if you guys know German Petrie. He suggested that I stop trying to be Jackson Pollock or whatever else I wanted to do, and build whatever I was going to do out of my skills as a comic book artist. So then I just started this series of these blown up images of myself as a character, just contemplating life and stuff, and just channeling all my issues into the works. And that's what I eventually showed at Gallery of Faro and at Lex Leonard. And both shows went really well. To this day, Emma says, Emma's one of the people that runs Gallery of Faro. She says that's one of the best shows they ever had. And work souls, so talking about making a sacrifice, because I made some sacrifices. I kind of gave everything up because I was like, working jobs and stuff, but I just felt like I wasn't getting any. I was just kind of spinning my wheels, I was like, well, I have to make a move now, or whenever. So I just dropped everything and just made work for a while, and pinch pennies until I finished the whole series and had enough work for 2 shows. And it worked out. Like I said, I sold a bunch of pieces, so I was like, wow, I can actually make some money at this. And then those shows led to commissions, which up to this day I still survive off of like commissions and stuff. That allowed me, I rolled that money over into opening get my own little studio, getting the space, and gutting it and redoing it and turning it into like a gallery studio project space called the Kedar Studio of Art. This was immediately next to Al Jara, so that's how Victor and I picked up. Victor was also was really helpful in terms of just giving advice or to talk. I miss Al Jara because it was a place to just kind of go and kick it at any time. You go and Victor would welcome you in, and you sit in the office and you talk about careers and how to raise money and making connections, and which is really important. I was across the hall from Index Art Center, so Lowell was like my brother in the war, at least for a time in terms of running an institution and stuff. And then while I was there, that building also housed a lot of other artists, and then at that point I wanted to kind of change my subject matter, and I started, something happened. Facebook. I'm sure like you guys, you get on Facebook, and when you first got on Facebook, you realize you had family members, some of them you hadn't talked to in a long time. So that happened to me, and I started connecting with other Darmanies. So I had this whole thing now where it's like, oh, I'm too Americanized. I got to reconnect, to my heritage more, and started to listen to, Calypso that I remember here growing up, And then I noticed that the kids around me, so talk about culture shock, which I went through a couple of them coming from Trinidad. One was I got around kids who, or hipsters as I call them, who they would smoke a joint and listen to reggae, which is typical, which is what I saw in Trinidad too, because I knew a lot of Rastas and stuff growing up. But these kids were not Rastas at all, ultimately knew nothing whatsoever about it. That to them was just like guys with dreads who were cool, and and advocated for marijuana, and making cool music, and I thought that was shocking because in Trinidad Rastas was so controversial.
Yeah, ostracized.
Ostracized,
In
marginalized.
most of the Caribbean countries at that time, it was, that was the response from the mainstream.
Yeah. They would. I remember my grandmother. There was a guy that used to a Rasta who would come and garden, and help my grandmother around the house. She'd pay him and stuff. And she was always like, hide this, hide that, hide this, you know, because he might steal it. And I always thought he was like,
Because he had locks.
yeah, you're right. Yeah. So even when I started my locks, and I started my locks as, you know, I'm going to be an artist, and you know, and all the kids of my generation in high school, they were all growing locks and, you know, partying in New York, and you know, they were like, oh, you see, you could grow some locks so when you dance, you know, bounce around, you know, it was all that stuff. And you know, my parents, they were like upset, you know, what are you, a Rasta now, you know? So experiencing that, and then to see these kids who, to them it was like they weren't connected to none of that. They would look at me and couldn't understand why I didn't smoke weed all the time. And I would tell them, you know, it's because I'm from the Caribbean and I don't smoke weed all the time. And then they would have, like, in their record collection, they would have like every, like, you know, roots reggae album that came out, you know. They're like, wow, I didn't know Culture had, you know, the Congos had that many albums, you know. Because the Rastas coming up, they weren't like that, you know, they'd have like a little cassette or something like that.
Exactly.
You know, so these kids had access, you know, and they knew all the songs, and so how that relates to this is that I have a sense, I don't want to be preachy, but I wanted to make something that would give a sense of what it felt like to be in the Caribbean, and what at least what I felt the benefits of that movement was on, you know, the Caribbean persona, you know, and you know, without being preachy. I didn't want to be like, I don't want to talk about the usual, you know, Haile Selassie and, you know, get into that kind of stuff. I just wanted to give a sense of what it felt like, which for me, I felt that the impact that the Rastas had in the Caribbean as a, you know, post-colonialist resistance movement was that in rejecting society, they kind of helped us to learn to be, to have dignity and be proud of ourselves, even if you have nothing. Yeah, because they didn't have wealth and stuff to show, or, you know, they weren't intellectuals or had educations or guns or anything like that. All they had were themselves. And they would walk the street with like a sense of pride. You know, they had that, what they call trotting through the street, you know, with their chest up. And that was enough. And I always felt that, you know, I mean, up to this day, people talk about me walking through Newark, and that I have this presence, you know, and I always attribute it to that. And I don't even think it's just me. I think Caribbean people, you know, most of them anyway, have some sort of sense of that, you know, which I felt coming up in East Orange. A lot of those kids did not have. It was always, their sense of pride was always dependent on something else. Something else for validation. They didn't necessarily find it within. So I just wanted to channel that through this series, where the artist is just walking from his home. It's a loose narrative. You can pick it up at any point. So it's not like, oh, you know, this is the beginning. But the idea is that he's walking out of his house and just going to a public pool. And, you know, I just place them in different little situations along the way. So this one is somewhere on the way to the pool. And then this piece, it's my salute to Calypso, with all the kind of like innuendos and stuff like that, and celebration that Calypso has. Yeah, and the piece over there, he's actually surrounded. That's me more looking at sort of what happened to the Rasta movement, the different incarnations of it, you know, in terms of people with dreads anyway. The first one here, well, I call this the first one because that's when him actually leaving his house, even though you don't see the house in it. For this series, I would go on Google Maps, and I would actually try to go back and see Cipriani Street in Mova, as the streets I grew up on, to see if my grandfather's house is still there and what it looks like. And I did find some pictures, which I would then like make sketches, and then some of the houses would be based on that house. Or you know, I'd just go on Google and Google houses in Trinidad, and, you know, whatever I saw, I would kind of work off of that to try to recreate this sense. Now, this story takes place on an island called Shakashakari, which is an uninhabited island off the coast of Trinidad. And I purposely did that to sort of like, kind of like aim and miss. Try to talk about Trinidad without talking about it. So it's, it's a sort of fictional place in this sense, and I refer to work as being like nostalgic in that sense, because it's really based on not necessarily an ideal, but it's based on my imagination. Since this work, I worked on this series from 2009 to 2012. I've shown it a couple places. I still don't feel like it's really gotten out there into the public consciousness, but it seems like Caribbean artists know about it, because when I mention it, they're like, oh, you're the one that did that series. The biggest show I had with it was at, what's his name? Reginald Lewis Gallery. It's not Reginald Lewis Gallery in Los Angeles. This was back in 2011, so forgive me if I forgot. And it's gone as far as Salt Lake City, Idaho, Utah, at the Salt Lake City Art Center. And that's it.
One of the things I will remark on here is, like Kevin mentioned, growing up with your culture surrounding you, and then moving to a different part of the world, coming from a smaller nation and moving to the metropolis like New York is and America is, one of the biggest countries, industrialized nations in the world. But looking at the time that has passed since you've been living, one of the things you realize is that culture that you left behind had more of a resonance outside of the country than you thought. And like Kevin mentioned, growing up around Rastafari and everything that was connected with it in the late 70s, 80s, and I moved here in the early 80s. And I remember growing up at that time when Bob Marley really started to become famous. And my dad wouldn't even let me play that music in the house. I had to have earphones. He'd go, oh, I want to hear that. And about 10 years after that, I returned home to visit my folks after I'd been living here for a while. I went to university, and I remember taking home some CDs at the time. And I had my reggae music, And folks, my parents went out to dinner somewhere, and I was staying with them. We put it was Bob Marley's Babylon by Bus out, his second live album, and I'm pumping this thing, and I'm in the house and enjoying myself. And then my folks came back, right? Like, I'm not even worried about it, my dad came in, and he didn't say anything, but sat down or whatever. But when it finished, and I was getting ready to leave, and I went to take the CD out of the player. He said, "No, don't take that." I said, because this is my dad, though, so I'm like. He says, "No, you could get more when you go back to America." So came full circle. And by then, obviously, the whole world had been exposed to the lyrics, and not just the music, but the message. And that permeated the entire world. So it's fascinating how culture moves and how it's carried around the world. You don't even think about it. And that's one of the things, being integrated into America. It's one of the beautiful things about this country is that we've all come here and we have become part of this nation, but what we brought with us has become a part of the nation too. And it's what makes this country great.
I mean, yes, I was a kid down there, but same thing, culture shock. When I came here, I was surprised as to how popular Bob Marley was. You know, like in Trinidad, the largest thing was, you know, Sparrow, you know?
Yes,
But
of course.
you came here and a lot of people didn't know who's, you know, Sparrow, what are you talking about? But they all knew Bob Marley. And I know what Bob Marley represented to us, you know, how deep it was to us. I couldn't like process that, like, so what does it mean to them? It's like Hollywood up here, you know?
They're playing behind car ads.
Yeah, I couldn't, you know, it took a while to wrap my head around that, you know?
But you know, like the thing that you have to also realize as artists, and I noticed that in all of you, is that we come from a different background, and usually when we are at peace, when we are in a creative moment, usually this is where we go back. And even though we are in a completely different surrounding, even though we are in a different country with different culture, our culture is still inside of us.
Nostalgia.
And whenever we whenever we create, that culture that is inside of us comes out regardless of where we are. All my art, you know, comes, you know, you can feel Haiti in that. Even if I do something that's abstract, even when I do sometimes I do something abstract, people notice the Caribbean colors in there. So the culture is there no matter what. And when you are at the moment of creation, this is where it manifests itself, even, you know, most of the time.
I have a question. Since you're saying that you're very connected to your original culture,
Yes.
okay, because that's what you grew up with. And this is not just for you, this is for all of you, because you're saying the same thing. You've been here a long time.
Yes, since 1964.
Yeah, do you feel that you are connected to this culture, and can you translate your original culture with this culture?
You know,
This is for all of you, each of you, because I think,
It's a good question.
yeah, because, you know, there's a comfort level
Yeah.
when you go back to your original culture,
yes.
and there's tension when you confront or you express your new culture because you don't know, you're not familiar with it, but you've been here a long time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the new culture has become part of you.
Consumer owned
You know, I will answer your question with a story that I heard. Somebody met somebody else who was, you know, from another place. And that person said, you know, I'll use Haiti. Do you love Haiti? And said, yes, I love Haiti. How about the U.S.? Do you love the U.S.? Oh, I love the U.S. The U.S. has been so good to me. He said, how do you love, you know? He said, well, Haiti is like my mother. She made me. Regardless of where I am in the world, I will always love my mommy. My mommy will always be in my heart. And when I think of my mom, I feel something really special that I cannot compare with anything else. The U.S., I'm married. This is my wife. I love my wife very, very much. And there is nothing in the world that I wouldn't do for my wife. And it's two loves. And I think that analogy really is wonderful. And it really explains, you know, how we feel, you know, when we come with a different culture.
Well, do you even try to collage the two or connect the two?
They're connected.
I don't think you have to try.
Well, I think it comes naturally.
Yeah, I don't think you have to try if you...
No,
No,
that's
but
not what I'm
she's
saying.
saying
That's not what
something
I'm
else.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
saying. What I'm saying is, the expression, again, is very heavily culturally
Caribbean,
Caribbean. But here, there's a different dynamic, okay? And I'm saying, have you ever tried to collage the two? Not one or the other, like one is closer to you than the other one, but to make that connection.
Short answer would be yes, because the dress that you see that these ladies are wearing are not usually dresses that they would wear in Haiti. You know, so that's one way where, you know, I take the, you know, the beauty, you know, but they're both beautiful. You know, the beauty, the softness, all the material, you know, and I take that from here and I translate it in what, and the feeling, to the feeling that I want to convey. You know.
Well, for me, that's one of the reasons why when I pursue some art education at the Art Students League, I chose illustration because some of the more American style or imagery or aesthetical work is still married with what I can conceive and what I feel is the origin of my Caribbeanism in there. But what that does is to sort of give it a wow, you know. So when folks look at even though for instance, I've done a number of scenes of Central Park. Now, if you look at traditional artists who were born here, his or her style and approach is one way. Mine, I have certain colors and feelings of light within that you can only say it's coming from what I've experienced growing up in the Caribbean into an American landscape scenery. So yes, to answer it, I marry both together many times. I've had commissions given to me, which I did, and there again you will see some of that. I've done some work for Simon & Schuster, you know, Prentice Hall series. There again, you see the two elements come together in that body of work. So I've learned to remember birth and remember the wife, as Patricia said. You know, and the wife is good to me. So
Exactly what feeds you.
yeah, because sometimes the client will say, well, can you put a little bit more? And I have something here to work from, and yes, I do it. I give them what they're asked for. You know?
See, exactly. What's interesting is like I look at this picture here, and this is obviously in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But you know, you had an umbrella and a cart, and you got, you know, downtown Newark.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, you know what I'm saying?
You can see that.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
I mean, I
So
can
I borrow from
translate
both.
that, but yeah.
I borrow from both.
I mean,
And I do that purposely. Because folks will say to me, why you don't stick with what is home? I said, because I live here too.
Yeah.
And believe me, more of my work have been sold to people who are non-Caribbean,
Yes,
right?
I find that also.
Than Caribbean.
I find that also.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though my colors are Caribbean, you know, I'm also represented by Bridgman Art Library, and a lot of books that, you know, use my images for their covers, you know, are not from the island.
Not Caribbean.
They're not Caribbean.
Well, you
Imagery-
know, America's an international company.
Yeah.
It is, but you gotta remind our president that.
Influences here.
Yeah.
It is very much so.
Influences.
Yeah.
You understand is
Okay.
that was supposed to, the other artist that was supposed to be here tonight, his work is to the left.
Yeah, I know,
Front
I love his work.
piece is Mr. Deceus. Again, you will see in, especially the two larger pieces, he's trying to do exactly what you discussed.
That's why I love it.
Yeah, it's the synthesis between his American experience below, and it really speaks to the obstacles, the hurdles that as black folks that we all have to experience in this country. But at the top, in that clearer space, he is then going back. It's almost like a flashback where he is incorporating memories of Haiti into that canvas. So they're both there, and they're integrated quite interestingly in those pieces.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Kevin?
Well, no, I was going to say in my case,
Yeah, sure.
I'm already, using tropes of graphic novels and comics to tell like the story of this Caribbean character. So it's already wanted to see some kind of Caribbean representation in comic books, which is an American art form. For the narrative part of it, I have Kedar going to a public pool, which growing up in Trinidad, we didn't have public pools. Yeah, my friends would always ask me how come Caribbean people don't know how to swim. And I would always used to turn the quick question around and say, well, how is it American people know how to swim?
Did you say Caribbean people don't know how to swim? Where do you get that from?
Kevin, these are the black Americans.
So what I would say is you don't go to.
You used to have to pull me in from the houseboats.
We've been charged by the water.
Yeah, it was at the sea almost every day.
Both in the south and in the north. Whole communities of black kids together.
Carlton and I grew up in a neighborhood that
we used to walk to the beach.
distance from
Unless you can access.
Walk to the beach.
That's where I spent most of my time.
I actually went to the beach before I went to work.
Unless you can access the ocean or a lake or
Yes.
something like that, you have to learn how to swim in a public pool. And if you are in a country or whatever that doesn't have the kind of infrastructure that allows for you to have access to a YMCA, because I should add that at the time I was going up to the YMCA, JFK YMCA.
Yeah, but growing up in the United States, black kids weren't allowed in public pools.
So that's what I'm saying.
So they never learned how to swim.
Right. They didn't live anywhere near the ocean, they never went anywhere near a pool.
So
somehow they all know how to
So
swim.
I saw it, I mean, it's debatable, but I saw it as that Kedar was doing something in Shaka Shakari that, that really is like a thing from here, So I have these fabric pieces that I had started making that I used in the last time I had a solo show this work, where I was taking clothing that they wear, especially him with his shirt and stuff, and remaking it like it felt. It's like the pants, everything, making it felt where you could actually put it on. And the idea is that it's tank top with shorts, which wouldn't really work in felt. Wouldn't work in wool because it would be too hot. So it's just that idea of having something that you create with materials here, based on what you remember, but it kind of actually doesn't work. And it's not that it won't work. It's not like you can't have those two consciousness at the same time. Like you said, your love for your mother and your wife. But for me, it was just kind of trying to highlight that they exist, that there are these two things, and that, because at this point I have to say, I can't say, yes, I am fully Trinidadian, but I'm not the same. Sometimes I have to check people, because they'll be like, well, my parents are from Trinidad, but I'm not the same. It's like, I'm not listening, I'm just saying it's not the same. So I'm not the same as someone, Kevin Darmanie, who would have remained down there and making art, doing whatever. I'm not that same person. I can't act like I am. So I can't create works critiquing Trinidad culture. I know some artists do that. They kind of want to start talking about the Caribbean, how Caribbean does this and that. I'm always like, well, you're coming with your kind of American, Europeanized eyes, moral value, and then taking it to this, this country that has their own moral values, and then you're looking at it from the point of view like there's something wrong with them. Even if you disagree But however they're doing their thing, don't judge their culture because who you think you are, you know. So I'm not interested in that, you know, work that are like that. You could take on something. Naturally you will, but to be focused on that, I was interested in that. I wanted, not necessarily a rosy picture, but like a positive one, you know. Because those are the things you actually walk away with, hoping.
Each culture has its negatives.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You can walk away with a lot of things.
Yeah. Oh no, I could go into that too, but you know, if I remember my uncle Roy in Trinidad, who lived up here for a lot of years, and he would tell me about the U.S. long before I came up here. And he had nothing good to say about it, you know. So he was here. In fact, I know he was here like in the '60s and stuff, where there's some crazy political unrest, and Trinidad was probably like a complete escape from, you know, what was going on here.
Voting rights and those types of things.
Yeah, well, yeah, but we're not getting attack dogs and good hoses. Yeah.
Now here, they just shoot you.
Yeah.
But less in the 80s. The 1980s in New York City was about as good as it ever got on the fronts in New York.
That's funny, I don't remember the 80s.
Not enough trauma.
Yeah, and we somehow regressed dramatically, quickly.
You know,
That was the 30th.
October 30th,
No,
September 30th.
September 30th. Wow. So we'll be back out here next week.
to be arranged. We'll talk about the dates that you have to come. That we'll all have to come.
I have like a little question. Forgive me if I haven't quite formed it, because I don't even really know what I'm asking. Something you said earlier just made me think about. You talked about being here and kind of looking back at the culture and how you perceive it, which made me wonder about complexity. Because you notice overall, like in works of the Caribbean, there's always this idea that it's kind of naive, you know, almost. You know, it's they'll be like, I remember Jersey City Museum had a show on the Caribbean, and I went to the show, and I had to walk out of there because it just annoyed me because it was photographs of coconuts.
So I
Just had like coconuts that they had shot in black and white.
Give shop.
And I was just like,
Really?
are you,
That's all?
you know, I guess it's Caribbean. Yeah, I actually didn't like a lot of Caribbean artists for that reason until I saw Christopher Kozer.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, no, that's it, because he caught the light and stuff there, you know. So I feel like there's this kind of way to think of the Caribbean, a very simple, which I don't mind. I mean, it's like, because it's a positive thing, right? The Caribbean is where you go to get away. And
Well, I think
sun and sand. And
we try to approach that because it's a rather simplistic way of looking at the region.
Right.
And for many decades, of course, from the time most Caribbean countries became independent from their colonial countries, whether it be France and whatever, in the 60s. From then we've developed our own economies, and internationally we're primarily known as a getaway, especially for very wealthy people that come to the Caribbean. But generally speaking, in the winter, folks will take a vacation there, like to go to the beach and have some warmth, right? So I mean, the Caribbean has been seen that way for many years, and when you look at it, there's no difference between nations. I mean, people have to work, they have to live, they have to eat. They do the same things. The economy has to keep moving. Professional people are working, doctors, lawyers, whatever. But if you go to a place of vacation, you don't really think about any of that. You think about what's an offer as a resort.
So my question was more to us when you look at your homeland and what people are dealing with there and what you experience here.
Yeah.
And you're in this place where you can make these comparisons.
Yeah.
Because you use one to inform the other. It's like because you lived in the Caribbean for a period of time and you're there long enough to kind of understand what was going on. You always have something to compare this to. You know?
Yeah.
So But that's what I mean by complexity. Do you look and think that the issues are more complex here in terms of identity, or was it more complex there, or, you know?
From where I come from, it is much more complex here. I grew up in the small village. I didn't really grow up in the big town. I grew up in a small village. And it's a simple life. It's a very, very simple life. There is no building, you don't go to the office, you know, you just wake up and people gather the few fruits that they have or that the husband, you know, brought from working the field, and they go to the market and they wait for people to buy it. It's a very simple life. And then when you finish, you go home and you eat what you planted, you know. So that's kind of what my childhood was like that. I spent a lot of the time just roaming the mountain. And those were the best time of my life. And all my colors, this is where all my colors come from. Most of my growing up, the government was a dictatorship. So there was no voting here, you know, going for there, you know, he was the president and he was there for life, and if you just shut your mouth and you don't talk and you don't say things that you feel you shouldn't say, you know, there was...
But how did you feel about that? How did the peace? My question would be, dictatorships tend to want everything the same and quiet and non-threatening. So the work that comes out of the people is non-threatening. It's almost stereotypical, right?
Yeah,
it's
There's
calm.
another side to that.
Okay, let me finish.
Non-threatening is...
Okay, let me finish. It's,
Yeah.
But the people have feelings about that, right? They like it, they don't like it, they're pissed off,
Yeah.
they want to create a riot or whatever. Where is there opportunity for expression, that expression? And if you expressed it that way, would it be accepted?
Well, I can tell you from what I experienced. My experience was that it was the status quo. I had no choice. It's like the sun rises while the president's there. The sun goes down, you don't talk about the president. You know, it was a fact. That's the way things are. You go to, you know, after a while, after I didn't stay in the mountain anymore. We moved to the capital, to Bijonville. I went to school there. You know, as if I was talking with somebody just earlier. You go down, oh yes, a friend of mine who's going to Haiti right now because Haiti's in turmoil right now. You go down, they drive me to school, you know, and as I'm going down, they said, all right, if there is anything, go to and so, you know, or, you know, if I'm not there to pick you up, go to and so. So I grew up with that.
And you accept that,
and
yes.
Exactly.
But as an adult.
I was not an adult there,
No, but
you know.
I'm not asking just for your personal experience. I'm just asking, you know, about the culture, the people in the culture.
People
it's like we're anesthetized, you know.
Yeah.
But there's something going on underneath.
Yeah, people didn't like it.
So
I cannot say that people liked it. People didn't like it, but we had no choice but to accept it.
I would
But
say...
is not where the artists come
Well, I would say
Like,
that this is the point I was about to make, that if you look at it historically, there were a group of artists who were working on the other side of that and critiquing the government, and some of them had to leave Haiti because of that.
And some of them,
And some of them disappeared too.
Right.
But there was always, because there was always an element of Haitian people who would not accept that, or they tried to fight against it using their art or their writing, and some of them in exile from Paris. You know, many of them were abroad in France, and they wrote about the situation there because they knew that, you know, if they were still in Haiti, they,
yeah,
you know, how things were, or, you know, someone might turn up at their house in the middle of the night and take them away. And these things actually happen. I know when I was a boy growing up, and I would read and hear about it. Later on, reading more and studying about the different periods there, and meeting artists from the country, I knew and read about these things, you know, but you grew up there as a young person, so you would not have really experienced some of that.
yeah.
It's
So
only
would
when
you
you came
have
away.
a curator show with those particular
Sure.
artists?
And
That would be dynamic. That would be like, I would want to see that.
You know, you look at those issues, especially in a place like Haiti, that, you know, was basically the first Black republic in the Americas, and they're still paying for that up to this day.
Yeah, oh yeah. Right now, I'm preparing a series of artwork on the Haitian Revolution, and and doing a lot of research, and I'm reading about all the slaves, these slaves who revolted, and then they would go to the plantations and talk to the slaves in the plantation and say, we're going to revolt. And some of the slaves said, hey man, I don't want to do this. I'm fine. I've got meal. I got 3 meals a day. I just have to, not talk bad about the master. And it was kind of accepted. I don't want to. I have a good life. For them, they had a good life.
That's the same thing in America.
You just couldn't say it.
A lot of enslaved people did not want to leave the plantation because, first of all, where were they going to go?
But in retrospect, you think,
yes.
Right? In retrospect, you think, how can you not want to revolt? I mean, this is such a big.
But the fact that there's this dichotomy, I think, is what's so interesting, and we never see that.
You have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, we never see that in art.
No, as you say, you should hopefully do a little bit. That's the.
I'd like to see an exhibition.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there is an exhibition. Well, there was one that happened. There is a new one that's coming up at the Brooklyn College, and it's called Vertière. Vertière is that last battle that won the revolution, that won our independence for us against the French. So it's called Vertière and the Louisiana Purchase, because essentially, thanks to Vertière, thanks to our winning this fight.
Right.
Now, Napoleon said, the hell with them, and sold half of the United States. So the United States essentially doubled in size thanks to us. But nobody talks about that,
This is
right?
what I'm saying,
So that's the show. So it's going to be in November, from November to February at Brooklyn College.
I was going to just bring up a couple of years ago, there's this family in Jamaica, something Brown. Remember what I'm talking about? He was a drug dealer. The U.S. had extracted this drug dealer out of Jamaica.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And one of the things they talked about was that the community that he was in,
Duluth.
Yeah, right. They fought to try to stop the U.S. from taking them. And the reason they had was that the Jamaican government, Jamaica is essentially a poor country, which means that the government does not have a foothold in all the communities, say, the way the U.S. does, in terms of infrastructure. So that allows for for what they call strongmen, a drug dealer, because what happens is those guys make so much money.
Yeah, it's good for the economy.
They build a whole economic system,
Microsystem.
and provide
Political
services.
side,
Yes.
they deliver votes. See, that's the other side to it.
Yeah.
So this guy that he's speaking about was actually allied with a former prime minister because he supported his party, and when it came along the election time, he was able to deliver his people.
Right.
Yes.
And the neighborhoods that he had, was his stronghold, those people would vote as a monolith.
Yeah.
No, and not only that, especially in Jamaica, the U.S. Rockefeller drug laws were clearly a vestige of colonialism in a big way. So they're extraditing some guy for.
But even fast forward today, the U.S. government is negotiating with the Taliban. Right. As much as they hate the Taliban, because the Taliban, because Afghanistan was just like wrecked, and the Taliban, with all their craziness, brought order. Of course. It's like he was saying where, like, in the Caribbean, people get up and go to work in the morning. Well, you're just looking for someone to provide structure so that you can just, go back to work and work your job and come home and watch television. So I think that's one of the reasons why, like, some people, they're like, nah, I don't want to upset the system because I just want to work and,
Yeah.
And live to see another
and
day.
yeah.
And I thought you were going to get at it. It's actually, of course, it's happening
Well,
right
it
here
happens, yeah,
in the United
listen,
States. It's happening right
like
now.
a pattern.
It couldn't be more. And the idea of status quo, the idea that that they talk about how the dog has got an injured paw because there's a thorn in it. They don't know to pull the thorn out exactly. They know that the thorn hurts and they know that they're kind of unhappy, but they actually sort of figure that's what it is. My paw hurts. I guess that's life. And it is an incredibly complex thing. I think that's the right way to put it on. The fine art, which is what you were, I knew you were dying to say, is that fine art is behind in terms of being able to negotiate this, the very subtle and complex thing that you're trying to do in your art, that you're trying to talk about. Music, by the way, literature, philosophy, literature is the best example probably, where they have these stories where it seems like it's just whatever, happy chicken on the farm. And it's like, oh, it's also a children's story. And then meanwhile, it couldn't be more scathing towards the government
Well,
or
the
whatever.
thing is, but art, music, and dance, it's all part of culture.
Yeah, 100%.
It is culture. It's the.
But also
it's not-
strong subversive
Okay,
elements.
but that's a part of culture.
Right.
Culture is a
also-
part of history.
Sure.
And this is how we express our history, how we express our dissatisfaction, how we express our fears. I mean, it resides,
Sometimes it's one of the few ways that you can.
that you can,
Yeah,
exactly.
often.
But it's also born of its time. So you were saying that Patricia, that you would like to see that element of the struggle and the fight.
Yeah, but she was a child when she went through this.
Right,
but
but
as a-
the
I'd
point-
like to see the
Right,
adults,
the
what
point-
they have to say.
The point I'm making is born of its time. So when when he was president, I'm sure you have artists there who were rebelling, and they put it in their work. When slavery was around, you have black folks who were rebelling. They put it in their work and in their song. At this time, it's not his or her experience. So for her to paint that,
Also, I think working on it in the United States, it's a floodgate. It's almost trivial to say, I didn't like the government stinks.
Right.
It actually
So I need to
Yeah.
try to critique.
How does that
Donald
happen?
Trump is lousy. How many
Does that
times did you hear that? A million times a day. It starts to
She
not
said she's doing it
resonate.
now, you see?
But
Yeah,
also
Because now she
sometimes,
has a bigger, she's an
it's
adult.
like, it would be sort of,
an international.
we live in New York,
Exactly.
and then everyone is asking you, how come you don't do pictures of the riots?
colonialism.
Right.
you know.
Right.
Like, that's the last thing I want to talk about in my work.
Yeah.
I
When
wanna
did
talk
these
about-
start? When did these are like from 2008 or something like that, you say?
What's that?
The pieces that are up here, they're older. They're 10 years old.
Strategies. They were
And the
strategies.
songs,
See,
the
they're
songs were hidden.
2012.
Yes.
The
Well,
words were hidden.
The song.
Here I am.
They were from the South.
Yeah,
All the time. I'm not doing pictures of
but you know what they mean.
New York looks like.
Well, you see, this is the
Right,
thing,
And the
the other
riots
people
and
curate our
gospel
art,
rock. You paint what you want.
artistry, when they curate our images and what we have to say, when other people curate us. They don't often look at these subtleties. They don't often get the nuances. And, it's like someone listening to gospel music. They hear the great, we love Jesus. But the gospel tradition came out of, I want to get out of here, okay? And I go sing my way because the singing will tell me where I need to go. So it was subversive. But when you hear when you hear other people talk about gospel, for them it's praising God and Jesus and all that, and that's fine.
But
that's not the reason for it. They miss those nuances.
Yeah, you use the art form, but underneath or within the art, you are sending a message. There's a message.
Exactly.
And the deeper
And
and
when
stronger
it
it
gets
is, the more powerful the
curated by
art.
someone who's not from that
Right,
culture,
single sign.
which is generally what happens,
Yes.
they miss those nuances. And that's what makes it interesting and exciting, the fact that these were battle songs.
So one of the things, I'm also a little bit of a record collector. So I follow little trends as they're releasing new vinyl and stuff. And one of the big things that's been happening in the last couple of years is people have taken an interest in hard to find records, and even with that, there are trends. So salsa from the 50s is hot right now, So one of the things that's real popular lately has been Trinidad, and it's Trinidad funk, Trinidad disco, Trinidad rock and roll, everything but calypso, and soca and stuff. Little bands that I remember hearing, it'll be, here, they're trying to make American music, they're trying to do like Trinidad disco, it's kind of silly. Well, that's like the popular thing right now. And when you listen to it, you hear why, because it has all the trappings of disco, but then it has that Trinidad flair, which makes it different, African funk, people love it. If you can find all the hokey groups that were doing covers of James Brown, that's like the hot thing right now,
Really?
So there's a place for everything, sort of. And at that time, those artists probably were like, yeah, I could be doing, high life or whatever, I want to do this instead. And they probably receive criticism, well, how come you're not doing African music, But now we consider it African music. It's just Africans being influenced by Michael Jackson or whatever. So I think with artists, and I brought that point up earlier because, I look at the paintings and I see this kind of yearning for the simple life, sort of, and I realize, it's nostalgic, but sometimes that's exactly what you want. You want to connect to that. You want to be reminded of that. And that's just as valid as trying to look back and see whatever complexities are there as well, And if you have a number of Caribbean artists doing that, then you have to look at what's motivating that instead of, again, looking at it from American eyes and looking at a culture and then saying, oh, well, this is what they should be doing, instead of trying to understand, why they may be doing this,
That's where their mind is right now.
That's more revealing because if they're here and they're looking back and, we're going back to the guy with the pictures of the coconuts. Now I'm more interested in, okay, so here you've had this big American experience and stuff and you just want to shoot coconuts. Why? And instead of just being dismissive of it, say, okay, so maybe there's something else in there that there's a yearning. And you can argue it's a poor or whatever, but you can't dismiss, the why.